Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Offsides. I'm Jane Rose.
And I'm Zach Shandel. Today we'll take an in-depth look at injuries surrounding the NFL and NHL and how they affect their team's playoff chances.
And our MLB analysts will be discussing the free agency frenzy surrounding 7 different players this offseason. All this and more, Offsides starts right now. With the NFL and NHL seasons well underway, injuries are plaguing teams in both leagues. I'm here with Curtis Stoichkov and Jessica Citronberg to discuss the loss of some pretty big players and what that means to their team's playoff chances. Guys, let's start with the NFL. There have been a lot of running backs getting hurt this season. Which one has the biggest effect on his team?
Well, Jane, I'm going to go with one of the most exciting players I've seen in the league in a while, and that's Dion Lewis for the Patriots. I know he's not their leading rusher. He's not a big bruiser guy who's going to run through people, but he has that attitude. He's that spark that you need to ignite an offense, to get people going, to get excited. And I mean, looking at the depth chart after him, you got White, Cadet, and Bolden. One of those three guys is going to have to step up for the Patriots to make these plays that Lewis has been making. I'm not sure if they can do that, but I mean, we're going to have to wait and see, but it's pretty big.
And I'm going to have to go with Le'Veon Bell on the Steelers. D'Angelo Williams can replace him, but he's an older guy, and especially with Ben Roethlisberger out as well, that's definitely going to affect the Steelers and the rest of the season and in the playoffs moving forward.
I mean, I agree that Le'Veon's a big loss. I mean, I think Lewis is the least replaceable out of these guys because of just how he plays the game. But to be honest, the Patriots are going to be fine. They're going to make the playoffs. They're going to do well. And especially Pittsburgh, without Big Ben in there, there's going to be a lot on D'Angelo to carry this team without Le'Veon Bell in there. So,
Right.
So this isn't going to affect Tom Brady's chances?
No, sir. No,
Of course not. Switching gears to the NHL, what injured players are crucial to have back for their team to make the playoffs?
I'm going to have to go with Duncan Keith on the Blackhawks. He is projected to come back, but the Hawks have really been struggling without him. They are a very young team right now, and they need this veteran guy to come back and help their defense.
Now, Keith is a great two-way player. Do you think he's going to be missed more defensively or offensively?
I think defensively for right now, just because the rest of the defense is not as strong as the offense is.
My pick, I'd have to go Zach Parise of the Minnesota Wild. He's their leading scorer so far this season, and they said that he'll miss maybe 2 games, but it'll be evaluated on a week-to-week basis. So they're being kind of sketchy about it. We're not really sure how long he's going to be out. He was a big part of their playoff runs in previous seasons, and he led the Devils back in 2012 to the Stanley Cup Finals. They lost, but you got there. You got to get there to win it. So they're going to miss his scoring, his leadership. So they're going to have to look to a guy like maybe Thomas Vinnick to step up and lead that team while he's out.
All right, well, thanks so much, guys. That's all for NHL and NFL tonight.
I'm here with baseball analysts Nick Neville and Marissa Ingemi to discuss this offseason's free agent market. Today we will be playing Buzzer Beater, where each analyst will predict where they think each free agent will go, then I will pick a winner of each round. So with that, let's begin. David Price has just come off of maybe the best season of his great career and is looking for a big payday. The potential AL Cy Young Award winner was traded to Toronto at the deadline and led the Jays to their first playoff berth in 22 years. Do the Jays re-up on their ace? Is a reunion with Joe Madden in Chicago in order? Or will there be a surprise team that nabs him? What do you guys think?
I'm going to go with the Cubs for David Price, and you kind of went into it a little bit about Joe Madden being a connection there with the Chicago Cubs and with David Price, who formerly played for the Tampa Bay Rays. I think that connection is there, and also the Cubs, while they do have a good pitching staff with Jake Arrieta and John Lester, they lacked a number 3 pitcher. They had Kyle Hendricks into playoffs, and with teams like the New York Mets and the Los Angeles Dodgers and even the Giants to an extent and the Pirates going forward with ace pitching rotations, I think the Cubs need to add that extra starter. And Theo Epstein right now, he's on a mission with that team with the Cubs, so I think that Price is a good fit in Chicago.
Honestly, I hate to agree with Marissa, but I'm going to have to on this one. I also think David Price is on his way to Chicago. I mean, he had a great year. He's a 30-year-old ace. He's a lefty. I mean, last time we saw this, maybe CC Sabathia, so I think he's in for a huge payday, and I think he's going to reunite with Joe Madden. Also, I honestly think the Cubs are one piece away from making that final move. Disappointing they didn't get that Back to the Future prediction to be correct, but I think next year's the year they do it, and they do it with David Price.
Unfortunately, I can't pick a winner for this round because you guys picked the same team. As much as I'd love to see David Price sign with Toronto again, I have a good feeling he's going to end up back in Chicago. Moving on. Chris Davis has led the major leagues in home runs 2 out of the last 3 seasons and is a player that can play both corner infield and outfield spots admirably. With Scott Boras as his agent, Davis is in for a hefty contract. Where do you guys think Davis will end up?
I'm going with Davis going to the Houston Astros because last season the Astros, while they did have a lot of power in their lineup with Luis Valbuena hitting a lot of home runs at third base despite his low batting average, they kind of lacked at first base. Chris Carter was out for part of the year, and even when he did play, he didn't play that great. I think that Astros could use a left-handed bat in that lineup to complement Evan Gattis in the middle of the order.
I'm not so sure on this one, Marissa. We don't agree this time. I'm going to go the Seattle Mariners. I think everyone thought they were going to make a surprise move last year and sneak into the playoffs. I think next year's the year they do it. They get Chris Davis. You pair him with Robinson Cano and Nelson Cruz in that lineup. You're going to have a big power lineup then. You also have Kyle Seager in there. I think that's definitely a lineup that's going to make things happen in the AL West.
In this situation, I'm going to have to give the point to Marissa here. The Mariners also have Mark Trumbo, who's going to maybe be playing some first base this upcoming season. And we're going to move on now. Zack Greinke turned in a season for the ages in 2015. He posted the lowest ERA in a single season since Greg Maddux in 1995 and led the Dodgers back to the playoffs along with Clayton Kershaw, undoubtedly the best 1-2 punch in baseball. However, Greinke has opted out of his remaining contract, making him a free agent. Is Greinke coming back to Hollywood, or is he headed elsewhere?
I believe that Greinke's going to stay with the Dodgers. They already have one of the best rotations in the National League. They want to compete with the Mets, so they want to keep a guy like Greinke in that rotation to pair up with Clayton Kershaw. They will be getting Rio back next season. However, after that rotation lacks some serious depth. Brett Anderson is a free agent. They probably won't be re-signing him. Alex Wood just isn't that much of a viable option behind him. Greinke didn't opt out of that deal to move on elsewhere. He just thinks he can get more of a better contract with, like you said, Boras as his agent. So I think that Greinke is going to remain with the Dodgers.
Again, sadly, I'm going to have to agree with Marissa again. I think he's also going back to the Dodgers. I mean, he's definitely another one who's in for a huge payday. And the Dodgers, over the past few years, are actually only one game above 500 in games that Greinke or Kershaw don't pitch. So I think if they want to stay competitive, they need him to stick around. And we know Magic Johnson has the money, so I think it's going to happen.
I couldn't agree with you guys more. Can't pick a winner again, but once again, Greinke's got to stay in Los Angeles if they want to compete. Moving on. So Jason Hayward was one of the few steady forces in an injury-plagued Cardinals lineup, a team which somehow won 100 games this past season. Only 26, Hayward is a solid bat and a great fielder who is guaranteed to break the bank this offseason. Where do you think Hayward takes his services?
I have Hayward going to the Angels because, one, the Angels seem to like acquiring outfielders, and they actually could use another bat in that lineup going forward. Like you said, Hayward is only 26 years old. Some people have him projected to make $200 million. I'm not sure he's worth that. I don't think he's proven it. However, he's coming off of a terrific season with the Cardinals. He seems to be a good fit with an Angels team that fell apart down the stretch this past season. They need to compete with the Astros in that division and the Texas Rangers, who emerged in the middle of last year. I think Hayward's a bat that's going to fit well in that lineup.
I'm going to go with the New York Yankees on this one. The Yankees, they're always in contention. They made the playoffs last year, barely, but they also got out. But I think they're in the time now where they're trying to get a youth movement going, and Jason Hayward's the type of guy that can actually keep the youth movement going and also improve that lineup by a great deal. They also have, everyone in their outfield is 30 years or older, and they have Carlos Beltran coming off the books next year. I think they could definitely find a spot for Hayward, and we could see him in pinstripes for years to come. And they're not shy on spending money, of course.
I got to go with Nick on this one. I do see Hayward ending up in New York. The Angels still have Josh Hamilton on the books. They got the Pujols contract. They got C.J. Wilson. And for all we know, they probably have a savings account ready for Mike Trout. So I don't think they're willing to give up the $200 that some teams may be willing to give Jason Hayward. So now we're going to move on to a very interesting case in Johnny Cueto. Cueto was considered a premier pitcher in the game since 2011. However, his second-half struggle with the Kansas City Royals raised some doubt. Although he showed signs of brilliance in the postseason, most notably in Game 5 of the ALDS and Game 2 of the World Series, many teams have backed off their pursuit of Cueto. So, where does he wind up?
I have Cueto ending up with the Giants, and I have two main reasons for this. First, Cueto had much more success in the National League with the Cincinnati Reds than he did with the Royals, and while he did bounce back into playoffs, his ERA in the regular season in the second half after being acquired by the Royals at a trade deadline was over 5. It's concerning when a guy from the National League moves over to the American League, does not have that success, so I think Cueto's going to want to remain in the National League, and AL teams should shy away. And also, the Giants need to contend in that division with the Dodgers in their rotation. If the Dodgers do keep Greinke around, they have Ryu coming back, they have Clayton Kershaw. The Giants need to make a splash in that rotation, where it did show some lack of depth this season with Madison Bumgarner having a good year still, Matt Cain being injured, showed a few holes there in that rotation. So I think Cueto would be a good fit there.
Well, that's true, Marissa. The Giants do need some pitching, but you know who also needs some pitching? The Boston Red Sox. We don't really want to be trusting Wade Miley out there every fifth day, and we all know what Rick Porcello can do. So I think a good dose of Johnny Cueto would be a great thing for the fans in Fenway, and I think he's going to make it happen. Dave Dombrowski's new. He's ready to shake things up in a big way, and he even said, look out for some monster moves. Johnny Cueto would definitely be one of those. And in terms of his ERA struggles, he went from 64 some odd innings in 2013 to 243 in 2014. So I think you had to expect towards the end of last year his ERA was going to be dipped. He'll be fine.
This is a really tough call here, but I think I'm going to give it to Marissa in this case. The Red Sox are going to get a pitcher. I just don't know if it's going to be Cueto after his AL struggles. The Giants can't count on Chris Heston to reproduce at the level he did. Lincecum's gone. You don't know what Cain's going to do. So I'm going to give the point to Marissa. Now, unlike Cueto, Yoenis Cespedes raised his value following his move to the New York Mets at the trade deadline. He ended the season with 35 dingers and a Gold Glove award to go along with it. This rare combination is hard to find in the outfield nowadays, so what team do you think drops the cash on Cespedes?
I'm going to go with the Giants again on this one because, like I said earlier, the Giants need to contend in the NL West with the Dodgers. They also need to add another outfield bat to that lineup because we saw last season the lack of depth with Hunter Pence out for most of the season. He had 3 DL stints. Kelby Tomlinson filled in pretty well in the outfield, and he showed up late in the year. I just don't know if they have much depth beyond that, so I think Cespedes would be a good piece for them to add to improve their offense and their outfield situation.
I think Cespedes is going to take his talents to Anaheim. I mean, they do need a left fielder. I mean, do you really want Colin Cowgill out there? And also, second biggest market in America, a chance to compete every year, a chance to play in the outfield alongside Mike Trout. How could you pass that up? I mean, they do have the issue of the money with Albert Pujols, but I think you stick him in that lineup, it's going to be deadly. And imagine his arm out in L.A.
I'm going to give the point to Neville here. I think Cespedes with the Angels would be a better fit price-wise for them as opposed to Hayward and his $200 million deal. Him in that lineup with Trout, Pujols, Cron, Calhoun, it'd be a real good time, and that offense would be a show. Now on to the final topic. Alex Gordon has been the face of the upstart Kansas City Royals. The former number 2 overall pick transformed himself into arguably the best left fielder in the game and has shown a knack for coming through in the clutch. Although Gordon declined his option to stay in Kansas City, could the two teams work out a hometown discount, or is the base of the World Series champs on the move?
I think the Royals are going to keep Gordon around because, first of all, Ben Zobrist is a free agent, and that was a terrific acquisition for the Royals midway through the season, acquiring Zobrist from the Athletics. However, Zobrist is going to get paid this offseason, and the Royals can't afford to lose 2 of their outfielders. I think Gordon's a player they committed to. They drafted him, like you said, number 2 overall. They moved him from third base to outfield and showed a commitment to keeping him there. I think that they're going to want to keep around Gordon, who's one of the faces of that franchise now that led them to a World Series and an American League pennant before that. I just think that Gordon, it makes a lot of sense for him to stick around in Kansas City, and there's no reason they should want him to leave.
Marissa, you mentioned Ben Zobrist. I'm going to have to go the Houston Astros on this one because the Royals probably don't have the money to keep both of them, and they've already said they're probably leaning towards Zobrist as opposed to Gordon. I mean, you obviously want to see that hometown discount, but we've seen guys like Johnny Damon leave KC and then win some championships elsewhere. We've also seen guys like Albert Pujols, who loved it in St. Louis, go take that big paycheck and go out to Anaheim. So I think the Astros also need an outfielder after Colby Rasmus is a free agent, so I think this is going to happen, and he's going to be on the move.
This just in, Colby Rasmus has accepted a qualifying offer from the Houston Astros. and will be playing left field along with Preston Tucker in the upcoming season. Therefore, I have to agree with Marissa and give her the point and give her the overall series victory in this free agent frenzy. And that is all for MLB here tonight. Well, that's all we have for this week of Offsides. If you'd like to contact us about joining our fantastic team, email us at offsidesbutv10@gmail.com.
And don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Offsides10. On behalf of our entire Offsides crew, thanks for watching and have a good night.